Hi guys, welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy a Django app with PostgreSQL database on AWS using Qovery. So Qovery is a platform which allows you to easily deploy your web apps. So before you get started with this video, make sure you have an AWS account and also a Qovery account. So you can easily create a Qovery account by going to qovery.com, as you can see in the URL bar. And I'm also going to leave a link in the description below where you can easily sign up. So having all this said, let's get straight into the video. Now the first thing we're going to do is to connect our AWS account with Qovery. So you must already have an AWS account before following this tutorial. And now to connect our AWS account with Qovery, we're going to use the access key ID, the secret access key with some required permissions. So I'm going to walk you through everything we're going to do. So first of all, right here in my AWS console, what I'm going to do is to actually come right here. I'm just going to search for something named IAM, and I'm going to click on it, named IAM, and it stands for Identity and Access Management. So now that I click on it, the next thing I'm going to do is to go into user groups. And right here in user group, I'm actually going to create a new group. And now right here, the new group I must create must be with the name admins. So I must say ADMINS. Now you must have this name, if not this will not work. So you must have ADMINS admins. And then once we do that, we're gonna scroll down. We're gonna leave this out for now. And then once we scroll down, what we just want to do, gonna come down, and right here we have attach permission policies. We're also going to leave that blank, and then let's create the group. So now we have that group admin created. Now that we have that, the next thing we're going to do is to come into users. So right here in users, we're actually going to add a new user, and then what we're going to do is to create a new user with the name Qovery. So the username gonna be Qovery. So this is the name of the user that we are going to have to create. And for the access type, AWS access type, so we're going to select programmatic access. This one is what we need. So now that we have this, what we're going to do is to click on next, which is going to take us to permissions. And right here in permissions, it's already select this add user to group, and we're going to select admin. So now that we have that selected, I'm going to click on next, which is going to take us to tags. And now right here in tags, what we want to do is to just click next. We don't actually really need tag, so click next review. And since we have all this, we know that the username is Qovery, we have the access type, permission boundary is not set, then it's connected to this group of admin. And what we're just going to do now is to create. So now that we're going to create this user, we should have access key ID and secret access key. So this is basically what we need to connect this our AWS account with Qovery. But we're not really done yet because we need to select some permissions. So what we're just going to do is to actually click on Qovery, and it should take us in there. So let's see. Okay, so this is just telling us that it has created it. So let's close, and then we're going to come to the list of users. Yeah, so right here we're going to click on Qovery, and then we're going to actually, so what we're going to do now is to, under permissions, we want to add inline policy right here. So once we add inline policy, we're going to click on JSON. So now we need to put a particular JSON text. So I'm just going to come in here. This is the JSON text we need to put. Now don't worry, I'm going to have a link to where you're going to get all of this, so you don't have to type everything. So in the description below, you're going to see like a link, and that link is just going to take you to the plain JSON text. So now we're just going to copy every single thing, and then right here we're going to replace it there, just like that. So now that we have this, what we just want to do, let's make sure everything is correct. Good. So we want to scroll down to review policy. So right here where we have review policy, what we're gonna do is the name. Let's name it Qovery underscore permissions. So Qovery underscore permissions, that's the name, and then this is just the summary of everything, all the permissions, and then we're just gonna scroll down and then we're gonna click on create policy. So now that we have created our policy, we have that, and we also have our key, our access key ID and secret access key. Now we are ready to go into Qovery and connect this. So now that we have created our AWS credentials, what we can just do is to use those credentials to connect our AWS account with our Qovery account. So first of all, just make sure that you are signed up to Qovery. Very easy, just go to qovery.com. I'm also going to leave a link in the description below, and you can either sign up with your GitHub or GitLab account. So once you are signed up, this is just like the interface that you're going to see. So as a new user, you don't have any project yet. So Qovery has what we call an organization, which is just like where you have store your project in. So this organization is named second organization. That's what I named it. So basically, when you come into Qovery, you have this organization. So what I just did is that I created another organization named second organization. So let me just explain that first of all. So we have an organization right here named second organization, and in here I'll have a bunch of projects, all the projects I'm going to be deploying. So in this second organization, I want to be deploying my web apps with AWS. So that's what I want to do. So first of all, I want you to know how to create a new organization. If I come to the top right corner, you're going to see that I have two organizations. I have first organization, I have second organization. Now these, I have a bunch of projects in there and they are not using AWS. But I want to have a new organization which uses AWS to deploy my applications. So that's why I create a new organization. So if you want to create a new organization, just click on this button here and it's just going to ask for the name of the organization, and that's it. So now that I am in this second organization, what I'm just going to do is to come to the top right corner, click on this. So now this is basically what it gives me. So you can see that you can just update information about the organization, like add descriptions, website, the URL to the logo and stuff. But what we really need to do now is to come into clusters. So now that we are in clusters, what we're going to do is to create a new cluster by clicking on this button named add cluster. And now the cluster name, let's name it like production cluster. So that's just the name. You can name it whatever you want. And the second thing we need to do is to choose our cloud provider. So basically, Qovery has different cloud providers like AWS, Digital, Ocean, and it also has Scaleway. So but for this video, we're looking at AWS. So we're going to click on AWS. I'm also going to select the region. So we're just going to click on it. And I am using Europe West, London. And then I'm going to click create. So this is going to create that cluster for us and also with that region that we want. So good. So as you can see, cluster created successfully. You can set it up now. So our cluster has been created successfully. What we just need to do is to add our credentials into this cluster, our AWS credentials. So right now it's a cluster that uses the AWS provider, but we have not yet connected it to our AWS account. So let's do that. Click on this button and let's click edit. So right here in edit, what we're going to do is to come into credentials. So as you can see, we already have our own credentials. So what we just want to do is to be able to add the credentials we created from AWS into this. What we're going to do now is to come into add. So let's enter credential name. So right here in credential name, let's just say production AWS credentials. And then for the access key ID, and the secret access key. Remember, we created it earlier in AWS, so we're just gonna get that and paste it. So I just paste the access key ID and also the secret access key. So now I can hit save. So I don't want to save this. So now that I've hit save, that has been like created. So what I just want to do is to finally come down here and hit save. So the cluster has been updated successfully. One more thing we want to go into is to come into resource. So when we come into resource, this resource basically like allow us to specify the CPU and RAM that we want per node. So you don't really need to understand what is going on here, except you really want to. So we can just like keep this in default, or we can say at 4, and then we can keep the node at 2 to 10 is all right. So this is okay, and we can just basically hit save. So that has also been updated successfully. So now that we have this, what I'm just gonna do, come here, I'm gonna click on install. So to deploy applications on AWS account, it needs to install this following services. It's gonna install Kubernetes and Qovery engine. So now we need to hit install. So cluster install in progress, and we'll be notified when it has been installed on our cloud account. So basically we're going to be notified when this process is done. So now our cluster has been created successfully. So as you can see, it shows this green button and it says okay. So now that is working. What we just need to do now is to deploy our Django application. So I'm going to come back to home of this organization. As you can see, I have no project. So before I create a new project or anything, the first thing I want to show you is the application I'm going to be deploying. So right here in my GitHub account, I have this Django project named Django Follow. So I'm going to be deploying this project. But before I even deploy the project, let me tell you what this project needs to have. So first of all, you must have pushed your project to GitHub. And once you push your project to GitHub, make sure you have a requirement.txt file. Make sure you have a Docker file created and an entry point.sh file. If we come into Docker file, you see that this is just the code, that the Docker file code that is basically, that Qovery uses to run our app. And right here, we come back here also, we have entry point.sh. So what is in this file is basically the Django command that we need to have our app running. So you know that when you create a new Django project, you must first of all migrate the database, and to run our server, all these commands, this entry point.sh file stores it. So just so that you don't code everything from scratch like this Docker file, I'm also going to leave the link to this particular repository, so you can just copy the Docker file and paste it in your own project. So now that I have that said, let's go back into Qovery. So what we want to do here, since we are in this organization already and we have connected AWS with it, what we're just going to do is to create a new project. So say create a new project, and let's name this DJ Follow. So we have this project right now, and what we just want to do is to click on create environment. So we want to create a new environment, and this environment can be, let's say, env, and then we'll just click create. So now, as you can see, it says environment has been created, and now the environment has been created, let's create a new application. So add my first app, application name, let's just say DJ Full or something, and then the repository, remember that has to be Django Follow. So we're going to scroll down to where we have Django Follow, which is this. So let's make sure that's correct, Django Follow. And then the branch, so let's check which branch it's on. It's on the main branch, so we say main. And right here where it said build mode, we're just gonna click on Docker file, and then we're gonna leave this Docker file part like this. And for the port, so this port now is basically the port that we want our application to run on. So the port that we're gonna add is 8000, because that's the port Django runs on. Now that we have this, we're just gonna be able to create our applications. First of all, so just because when I click on Docker file, it takes all my screen. So I'm just going to leave it at build packs, and I'm going to create. So what I can do is to just go to the settings of this particular environment and change that. If I come into settings now and go back into, if I scroll down here, I can just change this to Docker file. So you can, even if you don't create it at the beginning, you can just later come back and create it. And then I'll hit save. And now I can do the same thing for port. So I already have the port created, so everything is working. So now that I have that, the next thing that I want to do is basically just create my database. So I'm going to go back into my environment, and right here in my environment, I'm going to click on add. So I'm going to add a new database, and let me name this database like Django data or something. And I'm going to select type, and I'm going to select Postgres. And now I have to choose a version. I can just choose 11, and the mode is a container. So now I'm just gonna click on create. So now that the database has been created successfully, what I just want to do is to come into actions, and I want to deploy this database. So it says my database has been deployed. So basically it's deploying my database right now, and that should just take a few seconds or minutes. And once that is done, the next thing we want to do is to connect this our database to our Django application that we created. So now you can see that it says running. So this has been deployed successfully. Now what we just want to do is to, let's come back into the environment. So we want to connect this Django app with this Postgres database that we created. Now to do this, we are going to use some environments and secret variables. So to get these variables, we're going to have to come into our app, and then we're going to come into environment variables. So these are the variables, and what we're going to do is to go into our GitHub repo right here, and right here actually this is the settings.py file. So let me just quickly come back into the main repository. So this is the repository, and I'm just going to go into my project. And in Django we have a settings.py file. So if you are following this tutorial, I assume that you have a basic knowledge of Django. So in the settings.py file of Django, we're going to scroll down. So you know that in Django it has a default way of connecting the database, but when we want to connect it with PostgreSQL on Qovery, we use this particular format. And now for this particular database, we're going to have to change some stuff. So let me scroll all the way up, and let's hit edit. So right here where we have edit, we're going to have to scroll down to where we have the database configuration. And what we just want to do now is here. So where we have default database name, we want to come in here, and we're going to look for where we also have default database name. So let's just scroll. So we can see default database name, copy, and then I'm just gonna change it. If we come here, it's exactly the same thing, but the difference is that this particular code, as you can see, if I press Ctrl Z, is different from this particular code. So that's why we change it, because it's like a unique ID for this specific database, and the name should be PostgreSQL. So it should be Postgres, not PostgreSQL. So if I come into the Postgres, the next thing is the login. So for the login, we're actually going to come in here and look for where we have login. So you can see we copy that, and the value is also Postgres. So we just change it from here, and the value is Postgres. So we leave that like that. Then for the password, when we are setting the password, it's no longer an environment variable, it's now a secret variable. What we just want to do is to come right here where we have password. We're just going to copy it, and we come back in here. What we're just going to do is to paste it in here. So for the password, we don't actually set a value, and this is for security purpose, so we don't have our password just showing up in our code. So we have that password, and now for the host and port, we're going to come back, and we're going to See where we have host, not host external, just host. So let's scroll, see where we have host. So right here you can see that we have host. We're just going to copy that, come back in here and paste the host. And for the host, we're going to have to copy the value. This is the value. And for the port, this is the port. We just copy it. And the value should be 5432 also, so we don't need to change that. 5432. Let's just copy the paste the port. Now this is set up correctly. We can just commit the changes. So now that we have the changes committed, this is all we need to deploy this project. So now let's just come back into our project. I'm going to come into env. So as you can see, automatically Qovery is already deploying this particular app. So when Qovery notices a change in the repository, it automatically updates it and redeploys it for you. So what we're just going to do is to sit back and wait for this app to deploy. It should take just a couple of minutes and it's going to give us a response. So as you can see now, our app says running. Now this simply means that it has been deployed successfully. So now what we just want to do is to click on this open button. Once we click open, it's going to open our app for us. And now once I just hit follow, you can see that this followers update, and I hit unfollow and it also updates. So this particular app that I built is using a database. So once I hit follow, it's like creating an object in the database. So this is just confirming that our PostgreSQL application is actually running. Our PostgreSQL database is actually working. So now that we have all this said, let's just quickly do a recap of everything we did. So first of all, we are deploying on AWS using the Qovery platform. Now Qovery makes it like very easy for us to, the UI and the experience for us to just deploy our application easily without any problem. But we're connecting it to AWS. So AWS is like the cloud provider that Qovery is using to deploy this our application. So you don't really need to understand everything that is going on. Just know that you need to have an AWS account and a Qovery account, and you can easily deploy your applications. So as you can see now, everything is working, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe.